person or the patient by providing the best of our treatment, still the patient is not able to return back to his normal life. Of course, we have one more opening, that is rehabilitation facility or rehabilitation care that is offered to the patient, so that he or she is going to be almost independent of the caretaker. So these are the various steps that may be applied when we get on to the analysis of the data that we get from the human being. What are the different steps or major important steps that have to be followed so that we provide a meaningful insight to the data that we have acquired from the patient or the person are the first and foremost from the sensors. We have different types of sensors and transducers, which plays a role in acquisition of the signals from the body, and they will be transforming. If it is not feasible for us to work directly onto the signals that we have acquired, probably we'll go in for transduction. So that will come in the first stage. So some examples also I have listed in brackets. It may be an imaging, both anatomy and functional, or a spectrography, or a microscopy, simple microscopical studies. Then the next stage is moving on or taking them to the next level of either giving it as an input to a further analysis system, or store it for time being and later on retrieve the signals that we have acquired and then again do the analysis so that we arrive at some interpretation. Okay, so we have several storage mechanisms also. Then the next would be the computations that are made on the huge amount of data that we have acquired. We have several platforms, few are listed: graphical programming user, cloud, it may be a distributed system, so that all the various sources of data are consolidated. Then developing on scalable algorithms to work with the data that we have acquired, and applying these techniques, we can actually break down them into subcomponents so that our analysis and interpretation for prescribing a correct treatment becomes easier. The next is predictive modeling. Of course, this is another important step that is involved, wherein we go in for doing, say, for example, a classification or visualization based on what we have acquired so far, so that we can conclude what is to be taken as the next step. The last one is output. Of course, it is going to be domain specific, depending on which modality we have used and what is our interpretation to be made, we can prescribe the appropriate treatment. So as such, when we move on from the acquired signals or the data that are generated from the human body, how do we go about application of data science? These are the major steps that are involved. So now, when we look into, or when we have a closer look into the applications of healthcare, majorly there are diagnosis, therapy, and rehabilitation. I've told you earlier. Now we'll see one by one. Okay, the first segment being the medical diagnosis and monitoring. Of course, in medical diagnosis and monitoring, there are so many subdivisions, so many specializations, but still for our study, because of the time constraint, I have focused on only few of the major studies here. The first one being the medical imaging is the first and foremost application of data science in medical field is medical imaging only. Then genomics, or finding out what are the variations or how the different genes or DNAs of a person are going to vary, moved on or passed on from one generation to the another generation, so that how they are going to react to an external factors, all these are analyzed in genomics. The third and the most important one, of course, is a healthcare service delivery. Having known what is a methodology to be applied for any treatment to a particular disease, how do we actually go in for the delivery? What is the planning? What is the sequence in which we have to supply to the patient so that they are going to the better level? Okay, so in that we are going to cover patient monitoring. It could be a real-time monitoring, or it may be a acquisition and then sending it over a distance, putting under telemedicine. And also, not only that, when we have such a huge big data in hand and also tools for analyzing them, we can actually go in for predictive analytics so that it could be applied to a wholesome population, or we talk about the population health management, so that the community is safeguarded from a future disease or disorder that may be upcoming. With the current scenario or symptoms that are manifested, we can go in for predictive analysis. And of course, all these where possible are now possible only because of the data science through computer technology. So the first one being the medical imaging. So as I told you, it is the primary and the first application field of data science in the healthcare. So earlier they used to physically examine, okay, manually they look into the patient, and we used to make simple tests. But when we want to visualize or have a look into the patient's body, only on manipulation they used to prescribe a surgery. Say, for example, the physician feels if it would be better if he is going to have a closer look into the patient's body. Definitely, earlier we used to have a cut open surgeries, but that is not the case today. We have so many facilities to view into the patient's body without cut opening the tissue. We have endoscopy, we have endoscopic surgeries done. Okay, we also have laparoscopic surgeries for those areas which are deep seated, which cannot be reached through the natural openings available in our body. We have a provision through laparoscopic surgeries or keyhole surgeries. And of course, prior to that, in imaging alone, if you concentrate, there are so many techniques and modalities. We have concentrating on structural imaging as well as functional imaging. That is, you view only the anatomy, how the structure is of the patient's body. There are so many methods, specifically focusing on specific areas of the body. For example, if you say take ultrasound, it is for the entire body. Even though it has a poor, comparatively lesser resolution, of course, it is going to give you it's a real-time application. Optical imaging, again, it's a non-invasive and useful for real-time applications also. Then DTI, that is in DTI or DWI, we go in for white matter diffusion applicable to the brain areas. So moving on to the functional, if you see, there are so many functional imaging techniques wherein we are able to visualize or view how the functioning is taking place inside the patient's body. If there are any abnormalities or if there are any progressive stage of pathological condition, we are able to determine. For example, fMRI is a functional MRI, solely working on the brain. We could slice, or it is a sectional imaging wherein we could take innumerous number of slices of the brain, so that even if a nano-sized, a femtosized abnormality is there, we are able to clearly show it up in such studies. Okay, then thermography, variations in temperatures. Temperature is again an important physiological sign in our body. Any variations or any abnormality could be easily detected using thermography. Of course, it has its own constraints of applicable areas, but still it is also a very promising field. So some of the pictures you must already would have seen, okay, showing up different imaging. And with invent of deep learning technologies applied to data science, we are landing up with utmost 100% accuracy. There are, of course, some chances of misdiagnosis, but most promisingly, they are providing a very good solution, and they suggest better treatment solutions because the accuracy expected from them are more, because they are going to have the previously recorded patient records as a reference, and they are going to apply various algorithms and they learn how to predict. So in that way, they are contributing to a better healthcare. So there are several open data sets. Those who are into research, when they are searching for the data set, I hope they would agree with me. Finding data set, appropriate data set suiting their research is very, very, time consuming, or it won't be easily available to you. But now today the scenario is very different, especially after big data and data science. We have several open source and some are paid data sets. Few I have listed here. For example, OASIS, it is giving you a data set of neuroimages or brain images. OpenFMRI, again, brain images. Then CT medical images are available. Deep lesion, they are going to contain innumerous amount of images acquired from different patient conditions. There are so many variabilities. So whichever you find suitable for your research, you can go into that. We have IXA dataset, fast MRI, etc. Then once we have acquired using any kind of medical imaging modality that suited our application, next step is definitely it is analysis. whatever information is possible, all possible information has to be extracted from the images that we have acquired. So that is where we are landing up in image analysis. There are three important algorithms, common algorithms. If you say what is the base, there are three. One is anomaly detection algorithm, image processing algorithm, and descriptive image recognition algorithm. Anomaly detection algorithm, it mostly finds out if there are any deviations from which is stored as a reference normal. Okay, so image processing, of course, most of you must be familiar. Image processing, we have several techniques to detect a particular, if you want to localize out of the whole target a sample tissue, if you want to focus on one particular area, you can go in for segmenting. You can enhance, okay, the improvisation in visualization, all those things are possible. If you want to take alone that particular portion that we want to look into, that alone is extracted and further processing techniques are applied. So with the help of artificial neural networks, using the supervised and unsupervised algorithms, we are able to achieve all these things. So most popular analytical framework, which is frequently applied, is Hadoop using the MapReduce algorithm. Here we go in for a selection of optimal parameters that are going to contribute to a perfect diagnosis, so that appropriate interpretation and treatment may be prescribed. Other examples also I have mentioned, iDash, Hamster, MPI, GraphLab are also going to be useful in analyzing or processing very large images. If the data set or the size is huge, you can go in for all these options. The next promising area of data science in healthcare is genomics. So genomics, as I told you, it is the study of genes or DNAs. The qualities that we we manifest or show up is because of these factors. So when we go in for why it is happening, so many diseases you would have heard, it is a hereditary one. It has been passed on. When a patient goes to a doctor complaining of one major, say for example, major symptom or disorder, the first question, other than the demographic and all those data, the first question that a physician asks is whether your father or mother or anyone else in your generation had this problem. Okay, so that is because that is how, or that is the contribution it is taken up by the genes. Okay, we carry on the information from our few past generations, so they are going to play a very important role. So in order to predict, it's not necessary that only after encountering some disorder we have to find these at all. Now huge number of researchers are going on to predict, again predictive analysis. We can find if so and so combinations are available, what could be the disorder that the patient may land up with. Okay, so that you can go in for prevention of that particular disorder very much earlier. So earlier, if you see, before all these technical aspects or analytical procedures or whatever frameworks we have in hand now, it was a very time-consuming task because of the huge number of pairs of components contributing to this factor. We have several millions of pairs of DNA cells. So going in for consolidation of all the quality considerations of all these DNAs is a very time-consuming task. So now it has been facilitated by the usage of data science and analytical tools. Not only that, we can also give in, a hint to the pharmacological logistics, because they are actually, work associate, in an associate manner, so that they can actually predict drugs. If so and so combination is there, if this could be the symptom, the prediction, based on the prediction made, they could go about change of composition in drugs also. So it is also indirectly contributing to drug logistic application also. So here I have listed few of the data science tools that are workable on genetic data. MapReduce is an algorithm. SQL can work on GUI based application Galaxy. Bioconductors are also found useful for such analysis of genetic data. Then we have CHDS. It is a data set available. We have many number of, or many cases or different cases of data sets that's included here, especially the children with autism, any psychological or cognitive dysfunction. All those data tests are available here. So the people who are working or intends to work in such a field can look into such data sets. Then we have 1000 Genomes Project, where again they have a huge amount of genomic repositories, wherein you can find many number of combinations of data sets available for doing your genomic research. And next is healthcare service delivery. So having known, we have diagnosed using appropriate technique. We know what medicine has to be done, what surgical intervention has to be made for a particular disease. The another important question or biggest challenge is how it is delivered, whether it is delivered in an appropriate manner to the patient, so that the patient is getting the maximum benefit of whatever diagnosis or treatment prescriptions that we have in hand. So this is again a very important challenge. So when we look into the healthcare service delivery, majorly we can have two classifications. One is what we are going to do with the data that we have acquired from the patients who have got admitted earlier. What is the information or what is the learning that we do in the progression of the healthcare treatment that we offer to the future generation of patients. So that is managing patient data. It's not only that, when say a many number of patients are going to be, some may be admitted, some may be an outpatient. So there are several categories of patients also. Some may prefer to get service from a remote location. So how we are going to manage all these things? Definitely, again, we are going to take the use of computer technology. And even from the single individual patient, we have huge number of data. Okay, so managing the patient data comes first. The next is again, what is that we are going to do with the knowledge acquired? Okay, so the study that we do theoretically, know how to apply or what should be applied, all those will become useful only if we start practicing or when we start applying practically. Only then we'll be able to get to know of what are the drawbacks or pitfalls in whatever methodology that we have learned theoretically. So there comes our knowledge management, how we are going to apply the knowledge that we have acquired in providing an improvement in the service that we offer to the patient. So this is an overall hospital information system. It is not only always the patient data alone, it is how the whole hospital is managed. All the services are managed. How about the records, how the various clinical systems are, sequenced, and how they are going to plan their execution in patient care delivery. All these things are also going to contribute to the data. So it falls under managerial information database in addition to the patient information database. So there are a huge number of data that are needed to be handled. So we have several data. Again, this flowchart, it gives you an indication of what are the different data that we have in hand when you enter into a hospital system. Okay, so one is picking up all those data acquired from the patient. Next is how do we go about the forecast or use it for future prediction. A third one, how do we go about studying what will happen if this is available or if it is going to combine in such a way. So all those are going to again give into a predictive analysis or prognosis of the disease, in addition to the hospital information or the information about how the hospital system is managed. It could be a clinical information system or a patient management system, or again, it is a transmission of all these data to a remote location so that it is useful for some other patients who are situated in some other location. So patient monitoring, according to a study, almost 2 terabytes of data are required or available from the patient's body. And specifically when you are focusing on giving treatment for a specific disorder, the number is again going to get increased. So with IoT, we are able to detect the patient's vital signs in a more portable manner. we have wearable systems available, which will give an indication, which will do the job of picking up the patient signal and transmitting to the patient, doctor who is far away from him, so that the doctor from his remote location itself can prescribe what is to be taken as a preventive or a treatment procedure. So we can have a track over the progression, or also say assume we have provided some treatment and we want to track the progression or in the health condition of the patient. Again, that is possible. So tracking of the conditions after the treatment prescription is also possible with the help of such a technique. So preventive medicine and giving treatment at appropriate time, or early treatment so that the condition doesn't worsen. And also, again, it is contributing to the combination of the drug discovery. All these are very important, or was made possible only because of the data science. So again, this is a predictive analysis which we are talking about. So you are going to get information on what would be the manifestation of a particular disease, how it is going to show up in a patient, what are the treatment modalities which will be useful, and what are the diagnostic modalities that will be useful in accurate localization of the target. All those are going to be combined so that we go into a predictive analytics. And you can always find out, not always necessary that whatever knowledge we have from a patient alone will contribute to the prediction, but also we have so many manipulations made, or using the computational intelligence, you can find this may also manifest in this way. All those predictions are also possible in such a tool. So altogether, when we put all the information acquired from different people under different conditions who are exposed to different environmental factors, geographical areas, we can overall have a check with population health management. So basically, it is a data-driven approach focusing on the prevention of the disease, which may be prevalent in a society. So it is a community-based check that we can have on healthcare. Drug discovery. So all those predictions will provide an insight to what will happen if these combinatory proportions are done, so that it will be useful in improvement of a particular disorder. So all those combinations, intellectually we can plan what combination will result in what benefit, that is what is contributing to drug discovery. Earlier, again, it was a time consuming and a prediction was not that appreciable, but now today with the application of such analytical tools, we could achieve a very high, greater heights of success. So you can always find out relationship statistically associate, and what could be the outcome could be easily predicted using such techniques. So again, we have several sources of data available for doing such analysis offered by for general and public health. We have from WHO, we have from CDC, we have data.government and SEER. All those are going to provide you with information about patients, which will be more useful for us in all means. So when we focus on the scientific research, we have RE3 data, which contains a huge number of broad categories of data. So depending on the topic of focus or research area, we can go in for a selection of a particular data set. We have how the data care services is offered. Again, we have data set for that too. We have Medicare, we have HCAP, then we have Merck Molecular Health Activity Challenge. These are the data sets that is, using up the machine learning pursuit, so that contributing the, drug discovery. Then we have Kaggle, we have subreddit. There may be even some data sets may be focusing on a specific disorders. Okay, though, so they may not be able to answer up, several questions. So all those can also be found using the subreddit, where they have the provision of providing a discussion, so that you can get or an interactive knowledge sharing is possible in this particular platform. Then we'll have healthcare.ai, wherein again usage of artificial intelligence so that it is contributing to a greater level to computational biology. Then we have several packages that can be used for handling the analysis of data. We have BMT, biomedical computer package, SPSS. Of course, SPSS, most of you may be aware. These are the statistical packages available for doing the analysis of the data that we have in hand. Then GenStat, it's a tool for that comes under genomics. Then we have AP Info. Here also, a questionnaire sort of interactive chat box is included. So you can have any queries that you have regarding, the predictions. You can, of course, you can do that with this particular platform. Then computer technology. So far, we have been looking into the medical diagnosis and predictions. Now it is applications of computer technology and data science in therapy, which means giving treatment. So how do we go about prescribing a specific treatment modality for a patient who has been diagnosed with the help of, say, some CT or MRI? So we have two major areas of focus for the session. One is the surgeries, the other one is rehabilitation. Because there may be disorders or diseases which could be easily treatable by just mere prescription of medicines. But there may be a few conditions when surgical intervention becomes mandatory. So in order to reduce the risk of infection, in order to have almost less blood loss, during the surgery, and also the fast recovery, we mostly go in for keyhole surgeries or minimally invasive surgeries, because we all know how earlier conventional surgeries were done. It is a knife cut procedure, but now the entire scenario has changed. We go in for either looking up the natural openings that are available. If it is feasible for you to reach the target location, you can do the endoscopic surgeries, or you have to intentionally make a hole near to the target area and do the surgery, continue with the surgery, comes under laparoscopic surgeries. And then the next major is focuses rehabilitation, wherein I have taken the virtual reality as a important topic of focus. Okay, moving on to the surgeries. So laparoscopic and endoscopic surgeries, they actually form a part of minimally invasive comparing to the conventional cut open surgery. Then the advancements in such surgeries has been made possible because of the inventions of robots. So robotic assisted surgeries, or robot surgery frequently called so, they are also going to be useful for us, and most prevalently used in almost distributed areas around the globe. So in case of robotically assisted, minimally invasive surgery, we have two important aspects. One is the telemanipulator, the other one is robotic arms. Still, even though we say robotic surgery, the helping hand of the physician is still there. So we have the telemanipulator, which will manipulate how how the articulation in particular direction would result in what particular the procedure that we wanted to be done carried on over the patient's body. So that is what is the function of the telemanipulator. That means we can articulate the surgery by sitting outside, just looking into the screen or the display. We can actually manipulate the movement of the robotic arm so that they are going to carry on with the surgical procedure. So here I have put a picture. Left side you can see a picture wherein the other doctors and nurses who are not directly involved in the surgery are looking into the operation. That is why it has got the name operation theater. So that they learn how a surgery is being done. Now the scenario has changed. We have a separate sterilized operation theater where the doctors continue with the surgery. It is both are the conventional cut open surgeries. Now it has moved on to the laparoscopic and use of robots for performing the same. So top left, we have laparoscopic surgery, and below we have all those surgeries done using, the assistance from robots. Almost 1.3 million surgeries have been done, put together around the globe using the robots. So the next is rehabilitation. So with the data science tools that we have, we can actually, create a virtual platform so that it's not necessary for the caretaker or the physician to have a 24/7 monitoring over the patient. If they have the will, if they have the confidence, then obviously this platform is going to be very useful for them to improvise in health point of view. So this one is a old picture. The first and foremost experience of virtual reality. So wherein it was called motorcycle ride through Brooklyn. They actually provided a virtual the first experience, virtual experience for the people, with the 3D imagery and contextual smells, stereo sound and vibration, and wind in their hair. So now this has extended to usage of virtual reality in medicine, and again that was possible because of the biofeedback mechanism. Our body system, if you take, it is a highly sophisticated system, but it always has its own tendency to resume back to the normal if even small uh, clues are available to it. It is contributing through the biofeedback mechanism. So VR or virtual reality was able to find out improvement in the health condition of the patient. Say for example, chronic pain, that is a patient who is suffering from pain for over a long period of time, or psychological disorder. But again, I'm stressing the virtual reality application or the benefit would be possible only if equal response from the patient is available as a biofeedback. So biofeedback mechanism plays a fundamental behind the virtual reality applications in medicine, in especially in treatment. But other than that, we do have virtual reality applications for training, getting training. Say the graduates who are aspiring to become doctors, they get trained before keeping the hand, or before having a practical experience over the patient's body, or going in for autopsy. They can very well work on with the platform that are created using the virtual reality. The fundamental or the first virtual reality application was anatomical modeling, extended to simulation, surgical simulations. Then now today it has been extended to providing treatment under the head of rehabilitation medicine, you know, um, classified as a rehabilitation assessment as well as a rehabilitation exercise or training, so that the bodily condition of the patient gets improved. So how do we go about anatomical modeling? This images we have as reference. So we are going in for extraction of the data that is required to simulate the wholesome model, 3D model, and we go in for a volume rendering, or we reconstruct based on the images that we have in hand. So it's like creating a walkthrough, and finally we arrive at almost a simulated anatomical structure. It is not only the simulation of the anatomical structure of the body that could be useful for training, but also the functioning is also made simulated with the help of virtual reality. If you get look at the application side of virtual reality, uh, first one is autism therapy. Children with actually autism is a cognitive disorder. The children with autism, they don't socialize with the community. They tend to be isolate themselves from the other society. So it's not easy for them to communicate or socialize. So earlier, the treatment or the procedure that we have as an rehabilitation for such a child would be taking the child to the doctor. We have several sessions, and they would be, they'll be provided with assistance from a caretaker or an individual. But now we have virtual environments created so that the child, he or she can be devoid of the fear that they have in mind. They can actually move on in the virtual environment that has been created for improvising their abilities. So I've given few examples. They have starting with a playing environment. In addition to that, we can also educate them, like say for example, how to follow the road rules, or how when he or she gets into the practical world, how they could adapt themselves to the social needs, how they can be able to move freely. So that that stubbornness or the thing which is blocking them in socializing with the community is reduced with the help of virtual reality. It has been found very efficient in the treatment of such as child. Then next is reducing chronic pain, uh, long-term pain. Mostly, though the direct effect of the affected area is going to contribute to the pain, most of the studies reveal that it is partly psychological. Okay, so we here using the virtual environment, what we try to do is we try to deviate them from the sensation of the pain by just deviating their cognitive process to a different scenario. So that is how we are able to achieve the reduction in the chronic pain. So again, it is dependent on the feedback mechanism that is going to get motivated because of the environment that we provide. It may show variations in the benefit depending on the confidence level and the feedback provided by the individual patient's body. But overall, it has been found very useful in reducing the chronic pain. So that their the returning back to home is faster. Okay, so one such a project is FAMU, wherein they are given with according to the patient's age, they are going to provide different imagery or a virtual environment which is comfortable, which they feel comfortable, and they are going to thereby reduce the pain or the stress or anxiety, whatever it is, so that the overall health condition of the patient is going to improve. Again, we have Karuna Labs, specifically focusing on old aged people. There again, we have different options for choosing different environment. They also have, platform for interaction with peer people who are being admitted there. So if it is going to be a home-based rehabilitation care, definitely this is going to be very helpful. So this is showing the picture of analytics obtained. We give score so that they are motivated to participate more, and also improvise. Overall confidence level is also improved, so that they have overall positive thinking, and their the mental strength is improved. That is the main target here. So again, next is relaxing hospitalized patients. Those who have admitted inpatients, they are going to be far away from their loved ones, the family people. So that may demotivate them, or that may make them non-cooperative to the treatment, whatever sophisticated, very comfortable facilities that we offer. Still, they may not be cooperative because of this. For such patients, we have a platform providing them so that they have a feel of that they are in touch with their people. Okay, so that is psychologically giving them a support. Then enhancing physicians care to elderly. So here we actually incorporate the factor of empathy, which means though we are able to get symptomatic manifestations, based on the list down that we hear from the patients, but still the real scenario or the real feel of pain, how it is happening, these things could be perceived only if we or the physician empathizes. So that provision is made with the help of this. For example, it is called as VR Alfred. It is one platform when especially the young trainees or doctors, those who are non-patient with the elderly, they are made, they are assumed to be Alfred for 7 minutes, so that they could actually empathize how the real situation is, what are the pains that are undergone by the patient, so that it is rather than training mentally the patient, it is training the doctor mentally, so that they cope up with the patient, show more patience towards them, and cooperate with them. So that is called as We Are Alfred platform. Then speeding up recovery after traumatic brain. Those who have met with a traumatic condition and immobilized for a very long period, uh, they may not be psychologically motivated again to the real world. So in order to motivate such patients who have been in lengthy immobilization, we have again usage of virtual reality, so that they could see their improvement, they would see their see their own confidence level improving, so that they get enough confidence to move on to the next real world or practical environment. So that is how we are able to train up or make them ready to face the real world again, so indirectly contributing to the speeding up of recovery. These are with respect to the patient side. If you look into the training offered to the doctor or the nurse, as I told you earlier, it was looking into directly the operations done by the senior doctors, or getting participated in autopsies. But now you can have a virtual environment created onto, have a knowledge on how a particular surgery is being done without having a direct touch over the patient's body. So watching operations with the help of via goggles, they are going to get trained uh, not only in the study of anatomical modeling or visualization of the body, but also surgery training is also made possible. So the picture showing that. I think I have covered most of the topics wherein we use the data science that we acquire from the patient, be it a diagnostic procedure or a therapy. The analytical tools that we have in hand with the application through the computer technology, the healthcare has gone to a very far level in success rate. So it's all done because of the data science and analytical tools that we have. So I'll stop with this. Thank you for your participation. So, ma'am, I think I have done my part.
Any queries from participant side?
I think for most of them, the data set information would be useful, because when I was doing my research, finding the data was a primary problem. That suits your. It's not like you cannot get data set, but the very wide range of open source that is available now, uh, the the data that suits our research has become more pronounced now with the invent of all these techniques. And also you can go in for finding out which method that will suit our research, so that analysis is also possible. So analysis, especially towards the research that we do, we have several platforms and sources available in today's scenario. That is what I mainly wanted to stress on that, because healthcare is all about dealing directly with the patient's life. So whatever we do, it should contribute so that it results in a beneficiary way to improvise the health of the patient. So that is where we focus on. Any queries you can ask.